and welcome to another collection connection at Cyfarthfa Castle Museum and Art Gallery. My name is Christopher Parry and I work at Cyfarthfa Castle, and in this episode we are going to be looking at a very important collection for the museum and for Merthyr overall really. We're going to be looking at pieces of sculpture created by Joseph Edwards back in the 19th century. When you walk around the museum you will see lots of different examples of Joseph's work, and I'm standing next to one of them right now, the bust of George T. Clark, one of the iron masters at Dowlais Ironworks. But Joseph Edwards was a sublime sculptor, and his story is totally and utterly unique to Merthyr's history really. And when you go around the museum and see the sculptures of Lady Charlotte Guest, of John Josiah Guest, of all the different sculptural work he done in the museum, you perhaps overlook and miss the amazing story of this man's life really. He was born on the 5th of March in 1814 in Annesgai, and he was born literally into quite a poor family. Joseph's father was a stonemason and a stone cutter and would create memorials and tombstones and all manner of different things by carving stone and sculpting stone. And from a very early age, an extremely early age to be fair, as is testament to one of the main objects in this collection that we've got at the museum, we've got an oval stone plaque that was sculpted by Joseph Edwards when he was just 7 years old. And this just goes to show how ahead of the game he was really. He was a little genius at that point, sculpting that, and as the years would go on, his father would literally get customers coming in, and his father, thinking that the job was beyond his skills, wouldn't turn them away to go somewhere else. He would give them to his younger son, his child son or early teenage son, to do the work for them. He was really a prodigal genius in stonemasonry at a very young age. As he started growing up into adulthood, he went down to Swansea to work for a stonemason company there, and then before returning to Merthyr briefly, he thought he would go for broke and go for bust and go down to the capital, and he had a letter of introduction to the well-renowned sculptor that was working in the capital city of London at that point, William Behens. And when he arrived after several days travel, and he couldn't even afford to ride in the coaches of London, that's how kind of a penniless, this was literally his one-ditch attempt to become a successful artist in the world of sculpture. So he would ride on the back, he'd pay a few extra pence and ride on the back of coaches, holding on for dear life. But eventually he would make it to the sculpture studio that he was after in London, but on arrival he was told that there was no work for him. So the gentleman took him to another shop in London in the hope that he would get him some work there, but again there was no work for him there. So William Behens then said, instead of turning him away fully, he said that you can stay in the studio in my shop and you can study what we do and learn a bit while you look for proper work elsewhere. And so Joseph jumped to this chance and started spending more time in his studio watching the other people working and learning from them. And then lo and behold, one day a person came in looking for a person to employ, and he said, I've got a perfect person for the job. Went upstairs where Joseph was, and when he went upstairs he noticed Joseph working on a sculptural piece, and this sculptural piece in his mind was so amazing that he didn't believe that Joseph Edwards was responsible for it. So he asked around all the students in the shop who had done this, and they all said, well, Joseph's done it. So he went back downstairs and told the guy that wanted a new person to work in his studio that he didn't have no one because Joseph is working for him now. And he employed Joseph on the spot, and Joseph would work there for 2 years or so before getting into the Royal Academy then and really honing his craft. And then from there on in, his career as being one of the best sculptors working in London was set in stone. And that's no exaggeration at all. He was getting commissions galore of loads of different people, for monuments, for grave sites, for busts like this. He was getting commissions off everyone, and he was winning awards as well. He won several silver medals and other awards from the Royal Academy and other places. He really did go for broke and made it just by pure determination and by showing off the actual skill that he had as a sculptor. This piece next to me was actually commissioned by the Board of Guardians for Merthyr Tydfil because G.T. Clark had paid for a new boardroom on the site site of Merthyr's Union Workhouse, which was St Tydfil's hospital up until recently, and this went on display in there, and actually it was on display in the same room as our Josiah John guest bust, which Joseph had done several years before in 1838. A person called Thomas Stevens, who lived in Merthyr and was a chemist and a genius of a man, had this to say about Joseph Edwards: "The Welsh may be proud of their countryman, Joseph Edwards. There are artists who will make as good busts, but there is no living sculptor who can produce monumental work so pure, so refined, so essentially holy." Edwards would eventually pass away in 1882, but his work lives on all over Britain, outdoors and indoors. You can go to cemeteries in Cavan and in London and see pieces by Joseph, and you can go in buildings like Cyfarthfa Castle Museum and the National Museum of Wales and even the V&A and see sculptures by this genius of an artist. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed having a look at some of his work that we hold in the museum, and thank you very much for watching. Hwyl fawr.